I was disowned the day I graduated. If someone had told me that the happiest day of my life would become the day my parents erased me from their family, I would never have believed it. I was standing on a stage in a blue graduation gown, holding my diploma in both hands, smiling so hard that my cheeks hurt. The auditorium was packed with families, teachers, and students celebrating one of the most important milestones of our lives. Cameras flashed from every direction. Parents waved proudly from the audience. Friends hugged each other and cried tears of joy. And there I was, searching for my parents. I spotted them sitting in the third row. My mother was looking at her phone. My father was talking to someone beside him. Neither of them seemed interested in the moment I had dreamed about for years. Even then, I tried to convince myself it was fine. That was something I had become very good at, making excuses for them. My name is Emily Carter, and for most of my life, I believed that if I worked hard enough, if I stayed patient enough, if I became successful enough, my parents would eventually love me the same way they loved my younger brother. His name was Ryan. Ryan could do no wrong. If Ryan got a C on a test, my parents said he was trying his best. If I got an A, they asked why it was not an A+. If Ryan forgot his responsibilities, they laughed. If I made a small mistake, they treated it like a personal failure. Growing up, I always felt like a guest inside my own home. Not hated, just unwanted. Like an extra piece that never belonged in the puzzle. The only person who ever made me feel different was my grandfather. His name was Walter Carter. He was patient, kind, and impossible not to love. When I was a little girl, he used to sit beside me on the porch of his old farmhouse and tell me stories about his life. He taught me how to fish. He taught me how to ride a bicycle. He taught me that kindness mattered more than popularity. Most importantly, he made me feel seen. Whenever something happened at home, I could always count on Grandpa Walter. He noticed things nobody else noticed. He knew when I was pretending to be okay. He knew when I had been crying. He knew when I needed encouragement. Sometimes I think he understood my loneliness better than anyone else ever did. When I was 16, he became very sick. The diagnosis came quickly. The decline came even faster. I spent every possible moment with him during those final months. While my parents and Ryan visited occasionally, I was there almost every day. I brought him books. I helped him eat. I sat beside him when he could barely speak. A few weeks before he passed away, he held my hand and told me something I never forgot. He said that life would become difficult before it became better. At the time, I thought he was talking about grief. I had no idea he was talking about everything that would happen afterward. After he died, the entire family gathered for the reading of his will. That was when everyone learned about the inheritance. Grandpa had accumulated significant savings over his lifetime. Including investments, property, and other assets, the estate was worth approximately $900,000. The amount shocked everyone, especially my parents. I remember watching my father's expression change when the lawyer mentioned the total value. His eyes practically lit up. The details of the inheritance were never fully explained to me. At least not directly. Every time I asked questions, my parents brushed them aside. They always said the legal process would take time. They told me not to worry about it. They said everything was being handled. Back then, I trusted them. I wish I had not. As graduation approached, I focused entirely on school. I worked part-time at a grocery store. I studied late into the night. I earned scholarships. I built plans for college. For the first time in my life, I felt hopeful. I believed I was finally creating a future for myself. The inheritance would help pay tuition expenses. The scholarships would cover additional costs. Everything seemed to be coming together. For once, life felt stable. That morning, as I prepared for graduation, I looked at myself in the mirror and smiled. Not because I thought I looked perfect. Not because I expected some magical transformation. I smiled because I felt proud. Proud of every obstacle I had overcome. Proud of every sacrifice. Proud of every lonely night spent studying while other teenagers were having fun. I thought my family would be proud too. I could not have been more wrong. After the ceremony ended, families flooded the parking lot. Students posed for photographs. Parents hugged their children. People laughed and celebrated. My father shook my hand. Not hugged. Not congratulated. Shook my hand. Then he told me we needed to leave quickly because a family gathering was waiting. The comment felt strange, but I ignored it. Once again, I made excuses. Maybe he was stressed. Maybe he was tired. Maybe today was simply overwhelming. The celebration was being held at a large country club across town. When we arrived, I immediately noticed how many people had been invited. Relatives. Neighbors, family friends, former co-workers, even some of my teachers. The room was beautifully decorated. At first glance, it looked like a graduation celebration. But something felt off. Something I could not explain. My mother seemed nervous. My father kept checking his watch. Ryan looked unusually confident. And standing near the back of the room was a man I recognized immediately. The notary who had attended the reading of my grandfather's will. I remembered his face clearly. His name was Mr. Harrison. Unlike everyone else, he was not smiling. He stood quietly near a side wall, watching the room. Watching people? Watching my family. For a brief moment, our eyes met. His expression looked troubled, almost concerned. Before I could think much about it, my father stepped onto a small stage near the center of the room. The conversation stopped. Guests turned their attention toward him. A microphone waited in his hand. I assumed he was about to congratulate me. Maybe tell a few embarrassing childhood stories. Maybe thank everyone for attending. That was what graduation speeches usually sounded like. Instead, my life changed forever the moment he opened his mouth. And as the room fell completely silent around him, I had no idea that every word he was about to say would push me toward a truth that had been hidden for far longer than I could imagine. My father cleared his throat and looked around the room with the confidence of a man who believed he controlled every person standing there. For a brief second, I expected him to smile at me. I expected him to say something about my grades. Maybe mention the scholarships I had earned. Maybe tell everyone how proud he was. Instead, he began talking about family loyalty. At first, the words sounded harmless. He spoke about responsibility. He spoke about sacrifice. He spoke about making difficult decisions for the good of the family. The guests listened politely. Some nodded. Others smiled. I stood beside my mother, completely unaware that every sentence was leading directly toward me. Then my father said my name. The room became very quiet. I felt dozens of eyes turn toward me. A strange feeling settled in my stomach. Something was wrong. Very wrong. My father looked directly at me before speaking again. He said that families sometimes face disappointment. He said that children sometimes choose selfish paths. He said that parents sometimes have no choice but to protect the rest of the family from harmful influences. At first, I thought he was talking about someone else. Then I realized he was describing me. The confusion hit me before the humiliation. I remember staring at him, waiting for clarification, waiting for him to explain, waiting for him to stop. Instead, he continued. Every word cut deeper than the one before it. He described me as ungrateful. He described me as entitled. He described me as selfish. People around the room exchanged uncomfortable glances. Several guests looked at me with confusion. Some seemed embarrassed. Others simply stared. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear anything else. I kept thinking there had to be some misunderstanding. There had to be some explanation. My father would never humiliate me in front of everyone. Not like this. Not on graduation day. Then he delivered the sentence that shattered everything. He announced that I was no longer part of the family. The words echoed through the room. No longer part of the family? For a moment, nobody reacted. It was almost as if the guests could not process what they had heard. Neither could I. I stood frozen. My mind refused to accept reality. The microphone squealed softly as my father adjusted his grip. Then he continued speaking as though he had just announced the weather. He explained that difficult circumstances had forced him and my mother to make a permanent decision. He said they could no longer support me emotionally or financially. He said I had chosen my own path. He said they were choosing theirs. My mother remained silent beside him. She did not object. She did not defend me. She did not even look at me. She stared at the floor while my entire world collapsed. The pain of that moment is difficult to describe. People often imagine betrayal as anger, but the truth is different. The first feeling is disbelief, a numbness so powerful that reality feels distant. I was not crying. I was not screaming. I was simply standing there, unable to understand how the people who raised me could do this. Then came the second blow, the one that transformed humiliation into devastation. My father announced that the inheritance left by my grandfather would not be going to me. A murmur spread through the crowd. Everyone knew about Grandpa Walter. Everyone knew how close we had been. Everyone knew I had cared for him during his illness. Yet my father calmly explained that the inheritance had been reassigned. Transferred. Redirected. Given to Ryan, my younger brother. The same brother who rarely visited Grandpa during his final months. The same brother who forgot birthdays and family gatherings. The same brother who openly admitted he found nursing homes depressing. Suddenly, Ryan stood up. He smiled. Actually smiled. Then he thanked our parents for believing in him. The room grew even quieter. I felt physically sick. My hands started trembling. My vision blurred. The applause never came. Not because people supported me, because they were shocked. Nobody knew how to react. The atmosphere felt wrong, unnatural, like everyone was witnessing something deeply uncomfortable, but lacked the courage to intervene. One of my former teachers lowered her eyes. A family friend shook his head slightly. My aunt looked like she wanted to say something but remained silent. And still my father continued. He explained that Ryan would now control the inheritance. He described him as the future of the family. He described him as trustworthy. He described him as deserving. Every compliment directed at Ryan felt like another attack aimed at me. Then he looked directly into my eyes. I will never forget that look. There was no sadness, no regret, no hesitation, only certainty, as if he truly believed he was justified, as if destroying me in public was perfectly reasonable. My chest tightened. I finally found my voice. I asked a simple question. Why? The room waited. For the first time all evening, complete silence returned. My father's answer arrived immediately. He said I had never been a team player. He said I cared too much about myself. He said family resources should benefit the people who valued family. The hypocrisy was almost unbelievable. For years, I had sacrificed everything for them. I worked while Ryan spent money. I helped Grandpa while Ryan disappeared. I earned scholarships while Ryan failed classes. Yet somehow I was the selfish one. My mother finally spoke. For a moment, I thought she might defend me. Instead, she agreed with every word. She said they had reached their limit. She said they could no longer tolerate my attitude. She said this decision had been carefully considered. The betrayal hurt even more coming from her. Because deep down, I had always hoped she cared. Maybe not as much as she cared about Ryan, but enough to protect me from something like this. I was wrong. The woman standing beside my father was a stranger wearing my mother's face. Then Ryan approached me. He leaned close enough that nobody else could hear. His smile never faded. He quietly told me that life was not fair. Then he thanked me for making everything easy. Those words haunted me for months afterward. Making everything easy. It sounded like a confession disguised as a joke. At the time, I did not fully understand what he meant. But something about it stayed with me. Something felt hidden beneath the surface. Across the room, I noticed Mr. Harrison again, the notary. Unlike everyone else, he was not looking at my father. He was looking directly at me. His expression had changed. The concern I noticed earlier was stronger now. Much stronger. He looked like a man witnessing a disaster he could not stop. For several seconds, our eyes remained locked. Then he glanced toward my parents, then toward Ryan, then back toward me. Something about that moment felt important, like a silent warning, like a piece of information he wanted to share but could not. The celebration had become a public execution. Yet somehow Mr. Harrison appeared even more uncomfortable than I was. That realization stayed with me, because everyone else seemed satisfied. My parents looked relieved. Ryan looked victorious. Many guests looked uncomfortable, but nobody challenged the story. Only the notary appeared genuinely troubled. And as the gathering slowly resumed around me, I began noticing details that had escaped my attention before. The way Mr. Harrison avoided speaking to my parents. The way he watched every conversation. The way he seemed to be thinking constantly, as though something about this situation did not fit. As though a puzzle piece was missing. I did not know it then, but while I was standing there trying to process the destruction of my family, Mr. Harrison was already questioning things that would eventually change all of our lives. And before the night ended, he would give me a look that I would remember every single day during the difficult year that followed. I left the country club before the celebration ended. Nobody stopped me. Nobody followed me. Nobody called my name. That was the part that hurt most. Not the public humiliation. Not the inheritance. Not even being disowned. It was realizing how easily they let me walk away. As if I had never mattered at all. The parking lot was nearly empty when I reached my old car. My hands were shaking so badly that I dropped my keys twice before managing to unlock the door. The moment I sat behind the wheel, the tears finally came. Everything I had been holding back exploded at once. I cried until my chest hurt. I cried until I could barely breathe. I cried for the little girl who spent years trying to earn her parents' approval. I cried for the teenager who believed hard work could eventually create love. Most of all, I cried because deep inside, I still wanted them to choose me. Even after everything. Even after the humiliation. Even after the betrayal. A part of me still wanted my parents to come running into the parking lot and tell me it had all been a misunderstanding. They never came. That night, I slept in my car. Not because I had nowhere to go immediately, but because I could not bear the thought of returning to the house where I had grown up. The house no longer felt like home. Maybe it never had. The following morning, reality arrived quickly. I had less than $2,000 in my savings account. College tuition payments were approaching. Rent would soon become a problem. Food would become a problem. Everything would become a problem. For the first time in my life, I truly understood what it meant to be alone. The next few months were brutal. I rented a tiny room from an elderly woman named Martha. The room was barely large enough for a bed, a desk, and a dresser. The wallpaper was faded. The floor creaked. The window leaked whenever it rained. Yet I was grateful for every inch of it. Because it was mine. Because nobody could take it away. Because nobody could tell me I did not belong there. I worked constantly. The grocery store became my full-time job. I picked up extra shifts whenever possible. I cleaned shelves. I unloaded trucks. I worked weekends. I worked holidays. I worked until my feet ached and my back burned. Then I went home and studied. Sleep became a luxury. Free time became a memory. There were days when exhaustion felt permanent. Days when I wondered if my parents had been right. Days when I questioned my own worth. But every time those thoughts appeared, I remembered Grandpa Walter. I remembered his voice. I remembered his kindness. And somehow I kept moving forward. Months passed. Then more months passed. The seasons changed. Life slowly settled into a routine. The pain never disappeared completely, but it became quieter, more distant, like a scar that still existed but no longer controlled every thought. What surprised me most was how many people believed my parents' story. Relatives stopped calling. Family friends disappeared. People who had known me for years suddenly treated me differently. The version of events spreading through town was simple. Emily became selfish. Emily demanded money. Emily abandoned her family. Emily cared more about an inheritance than about people. The lies traveled faster than the truth ever could. I eventually stopped trying to defend myself. Those who wanted to believe my parents would never listen anyway. Instead, I focused on building a life that had nothing to do with them. That decision changed everything. For the first time, I met people who valued me for who I was. At college, I made friends. Real friends. Friends who listened. Friends who supported me. Friends who showed up when they said they would. One of them was a girl named Sarah. Sarah became the sister I never had. She never pressured me to discuss my family. But whenever I needed support, she was there. Sometimes all she did was sit beside me during difficult days. Strangely enough, that meant more than words ever could. Little by little, my confidence returned. I earned excellent grades. I received additional scholarships. My professors encouraged me. My future slowly started taking shape again. Not the future I originally planned, but a future that belonged entirely to me. Meanwhile, my parents seemed to be thriving. Unfortunately, social media made that impossible to ignore. Every few weeks, pictures appeared online. Expensive vacations, luxury purchases, home renovations, new vehicles, celebrations. Ryan seemed especially eager to display his lifestyle. Every photograph felt like another reminder of what had been taken from me. Or at least what I believed had been taken from me. Whenever I saw those pictures, I wondered about the inheritance. $900,000. It was a life-changing amount of money. A college education. A home. Security. Opportunity. The kind of foundation most people spend decades trying to build. And according to my parents, I had lost all of it. There were moments when bitterness threatened to consume me. Moments when anger kept me awake at night. Moments when I imagined confronting them. Demanding answers. Demanding justice. But eventually I realized something important. Anger was still a form of attachment. As long as I remained obsessed with what they had done, they continued controlling part of my life. So I made a decision. I stopped checking their social media. I stopped asking about them. I stopped hoping for apologies that would never come. The decision was not easy, but it was necessary. And for a while, it worked. Life became peaceful. Not perfect, but peaceful. Then, exactly 1 year after my graduation, everything changed. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. I was sitting in the college library preparing for an exam. The weather outside was gloomy. Rain tapped softly against the windows. Students moved quietly between bookshelves. Nothing about the day seemed unusual. Then my phone rang. I almost ignored it. The number was unfamiliar. Normally, I would have sent it directly to voicemail. For some reason, I answered. The voice on the other end immediately caught my attention. It belonged to a man I had not spoken to since graduation. Mr. Harrison? The notary. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Hearing his voice after an entire year felt strangely unsettling. It instantly brought back memories I had worked very hard to bury. The graduation ceremony. The country club. The humiliation. The inheritance. The look on his face that night. The concern. The silence. Everything returned at once. Mr. Harrison sounded older than I remembered. More tired. More serious. He asked if I was alone. The question immediately made me nervous. I told him I was. Then he asked if we could meet. As soon as possible. Something in his tone made my stomach tighten. This was not a casual conversation. This was not a routine legal matter. This was something important. Very important. I asked him why. Several seconds passed before he answered. When he finally spoke, his words completely changed the direction of my life. He told me there were serious problems involving my grandfather's inheritance. He told me new information had emerged. Information that should have been reviewed long ago. Then he said something I will never forget. Emily, I believe you were never told the truth. The library suddenly felt silent. The rain outside seemed to disappear. My heart began pounding exactly the way it had 1 year earlier. I gripped the phone tighter. Every instinct told me that whatever came next would be bigger than anything I had imagined. And as Mr. Harrison asked me to meet him the following morning, I realized the story my parents had told the world might be hiding something far darker than simple favoritism. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, questions flooded my mind. What had Mr. Harrison discovered? Why had it taken an entire year? What truth had been hidden from me? Most importantly, why did he sound so certain that my parents had lied? By sunrise, I had already given up on sleep. I sat at the small kitchen table in Martha's house with a cup of coffee growing cold between my hands. The rain from the previous day had disappeared. A pale morning light filtered through the window. Everything outside seemed normal. Inside, I felt like my entire world was about to shift again. At exactly 9 o'clock, I arrived at Mr. Harrison's office. The building was older than I remembered. A quiet brick structure located several blocks from the courthouse. When I stepped inside, the receptionist immediately recognized my name. She escorted me down a hallway toward a private conference room. Mr. Harrison was already waiting. The moment I saw him, I understood how serious this was. There were several folders spread across the table. Dozens of documents, bank statements, legal records, property files. The amount of paperwork alone was intimidating. Mr. Harrison stood as I entered. His expression was calm, but there was something else beneath it. Determination. The kind of determination people have when they are preparing to expose something ugly. I sat down. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he slid a thick folder toward me. The name Walter Carter appeared across the front. My grandfather. The sight of it instantly made my chest tighten. Mr. Harrison folded his hands. Then he began. He explained that several months earlier, a routine audit had reviewed a group of older estate files. Most estates passed through the process without issues. My grandfather's file did not. Certain transactions raised questions. Certain signatures looked unusual. Certain approvals appeared inconsistent with the original documents. At first, auditors assumed it was a simple administrative mistake. Then they looked deeper. The deeper they looked, the worse things became. I listened in complete silence. Every sentence felt heavier than the one before it. Mr. Harrison opened the folder and carefully removed a document. It was a copy of my grandfather's original estate instructions. The version I had never seen. The version my parents never showed me. He placed it on the table between us. Then he pointed toward a specific section. My eyes moved across the page. I read the words once, then twice, then a third time. I could barely believe what I was seeing. According to the document, my grandfather had designated a single primary beneficiary. Not multiple beneficiaries, not a family trust, not shared control. One beneficiary, me. My name appeared clearly throughout the document. Emily Carter, Emily Carter, Emily Carter, again and again. There was no ambiguity, no confusion, no loophole. The inheritance had been left directly to me. The entire inheritance, $900,000. I stared at the page. For several seconds, I could not speak. My mind struggled to process what was sitting directly in front of me. The inheritance had always belonged to me. Not partially, not conditionally, completely. Every single dollar. Mr. Harrison nodded slowly. He had clearly witnessed this reaction before. Then he revealed something even worse. The document was not new. My parents had known about it from the beginning. The room suddenly felt smaller. I looked up at him, certain I had misunderstood. He calmly shook his head. There was no misunderstanding. According to the records, both of my parents had attended meetings regarding the estate. They had reviewed portions of the documentation. They had signed acknowledgments confirming receipt of important legal notices. The evidence was undeniable. They knew. The entire time. They knew. A cold feeling spread through my body. Because that changed everything. Favoritism was one thing. Disowning me was another. But this was different. This required planning. This required deception. This required deliberate choices. Mr. Harrison continued. Investigators discovered additional documents connected to the estate. Some contained signatures that experts now considered questionable. Others authorized transfers that should never have occurred. Several approvals appeared to have been submitted under suspicious circumstances. Financial records revealed money moving between accounts connected to the estate. Money that should never have been touched. The deeper investigators looked, the more irregularities appeared. What originally seemed like a paperwork issue was becoming something far more serious. Then came the detail that shocked me most. Ryan had not been listed as a beneficiary in the original estate documents. Not once. Not anywhere. His name appeared only in later records. Records connected to the disputed transfers. For the first time, I remembered the words he whispered at graduation. "Thank you for making everything easy." Back then, I thought he was being cruel. Now I wondered if he had accidentally revealed something much bigger. Had he known? Had he understood what our parents were doing? The possibility made me sick. Mr. Harrison seemed to read my thoughts. He explained that investigators had already begun interviewing individuals connected to the estate. Several statements contradicted the story my parents had told. Former advisors, financial managers, witnesses. The inconsistencies were growing impossible to ignore. Someone had manipulated information. Someone had concealed documents. Someone had worked very hard to keep me away from the truth. And that truth was beginning to surface. I felt anger rising inside me. Not the sharp anger I experienced at graduation. Something deeper. Something colder. For an entire year, I had blamed myself. For an entire year, I had questioned my worth. For an entire year, I had believed I was unwanted. Meanwhile, the people responsible had been living comfortably using money that never belonged to them. The realization was almost unbearable. Mr. Harrison allowed me a few moments to collect myself. Then he opened another folder. Inside was a document that immediately caught my attention. It contained my grandfather's signature. A real signature. Verified and authenticated. Alongside it was a handwritten statement prepared only months before his death. The paper looked worn with age. The handwriting was unmistakably his. Even before reading it, emotion filled my chest. It felt like hearing his voice again. Mr. Harrison carefully slid the document across the table. He told me this particular statement had recently become the most important piece of evidence in the entire investigation. I lowered my eyes toward the page. The first sentence immediately brought tears to my eyes. Because even after all this time, Grandpa Walter seemed to understand exactly what was coming. And the message he left behind was about to expose far more than anyone in my family expected. Looking back, I realized that losing my family was not the greatest tragedy of my life. The greatest tragedy would have been spending the rest of my life believing the lies they created about me. My grandfather protected me even after he was gone, and in the end, the truth proved stronger than deception, greed, and betrayal. What happened taught me that real family is not defined by blood alone, but by loyalty, honesty, and love. If you made it all the way to the end of this story, write truth wins in the comments so I know you stayed until the final moment. Also, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next powerful story. Thank you for spending this time with me. And remember that sometimes the hardest battles lead us to the strongest versions of ourselves.